Well, hello there, hello there, hello there, everyone. It is Kristi, it is Sunday, and therefore it is Weekend Winters. How are you doing? I hope everyone is doing all right. You guys hear me all right? I want to make sure I'm actually broadcasting this time. Yes, it says end stream, and so I should see my own face show up there pretty. There I am. All right, we are actually live this time. That was a fun time last week when we weren't. Actually, I don't need my headphones. So hello, everyone. Did I say good Sunday? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening? Wherever it is, whenever it is you are. I've got so much on my mind today. I am all over the place. But yes, first of all, I hope you all are doing well. Want to say hello to some people in the chat already giving me messages. Appreciate you showing up on a Sunday or wherever. Wait, it might be Monday. I don't know what it is in Australia now. So hi to Sib, hi to A to the K, and hello to DN Fan 292. Hope all of you and everyone who hasn't signed in or chatted are doing well as well. Okay, some real talk, some honesty here. One, it is really a baseball cap hair day. I have to get to the hairdressers. A little less, convenient than it used to be. So yeah, we're just gonna go baseball cap today. Second, I've been working pretty hard at playing. Just FYI, I did not do my homework. Yeah, say homework, but I didn't get around to Kuhn. So when it comes to the philosophy of social science, there we go, right in front of my face. That's a good place. Hey, Natasha, good to see you. Yeah, so we're not going to get to Kuhn today, mostly because I spent my free time developing a one-shot for D&D, and I felt like that was good for me. I needed to take a break. So we're going to come back to Kuhn and Scientific Revolutions. Next time, I can give you a little bit of preview what we'll do after that. So what we got? We had Marxism and Science, Structural Marxism, Revolutions and Relativism from Kuhn to the Strong Program. Then we're going to, then we're going to look at gender and science. After Kuhn, the feminist vision. Because I got confused a little bit when people talk about feminist methodology. How can there be a feminist methodology? In what way does that make sense? We're going to deal with that. But not this week, because Kristi is a lazy. Now, I'll say Kristi just diverted her energies into other things. So, yeah, we're going to talk about today. Well, what I thought we would talk about today is, first of all, we're going to talk about the very, very racist group Mythcon, or Myth-Informed Milwaukee. You can see their Twitter thing here. And because when I look at them, they get away with so much. They're this Midwest small group, but they're really an awful hate group. And their leader, Brian Edwards, is not someone who is getting his name associated with the white supremacy that he pushes. Now, I did actually send out a little bit of a tweet. I will look in my notifications to see. Let me go to my account, because I'll if I can get to my account, my Twitter account. Just the big one. I'll have you guys vote on what you feel like. White nationalism, white supremacy. I mean, they are different terms, although they have some pretty overlapping things going on. And so I wanted to profile. There we go. There it is. I don't normally use my desktop. I usually use my mobile phone, so I'm trying to find my way around here. But I'm going to put a little nice hat. Yeah, this is my the rapper Token. Came to Cologne pre-COVID, and I went to see him live. He was very, very good. He's got some new music out recently. I've got a little poll here. I'm going to put this in the chat. Copy link to tweet, because I think it's important that we use the right terms. If you guys want to go and vote in this poll here, and you can wait if you want until after we look at some clips to decide whether or not you think Brian Edwards and his group Myth-Informed Milwaukee are white supremacists or white nationalists. And maybe what we can do, and it's responsible, let's look up the difference between these terms. So we can be a bit more precise. Versus, I don't know if they'll, I've got really small font on my computers, but we'll see if this is a question that comes. White supremacist versus white nationalist, white supremacist versus white nationalists. Yeah, let's look at the Southern Poverty Law Center, because we know that Brian Edwards and his group probably hate the Southern Poverty Law Center for calling out people and their racism. Ew. Top takeaways: white nationalist groups espouse white supremacist or white separatist ideologies. So this is often focusing on the alleged inferiority of non-whites. So they definitely did. Groups listed in a variety of other categories: Ku Klux Klan, neo-Confederate, neo-Nazi, racist, skinhead, and Christian identity, could also be fairly described as white nationalists. I think the challenge is that, you know, people can soft pedal their racism by not being the stereotypical not being Richard Spencer, right? By not basically being Richard Spencer and talking about ethnostates. What they want instead is kind of like a version of what we have now, but maybe a little more protective of white people, in that you're starting to see groups in the States get some like social influence, get some political influence, get some economic influence, and they are therefore, you know, they're in academia, so they can talk about their issues. They are running businesses, so they can talk about how they've been affected by racism. They're winning places in office, you know, and so they're able to speak to their experience of racism. And the goal of Brian Edwards and his white, I want to call it white supremacist group, is to make sure it preserves white people's privileges. And, you know, so we're gonna talk about that. Hey, Gerd-Jan, how are you doing? And NL Nil Magnifico, good morning. Yes, hello to everyone. So I think when it comes to, there's unfortunately a lot of overlaps with language and ideology. And I don't think that they're actively white supremacists, but they certainly are pushing a white, like, supremacy in terms of cultural hegemony, political power, economic clout, and social influence. Their group is specifically attacking people who want to do anti-racism work on all of those fronts, especially Black people, as we'll see in their timeline. So, I didn't even, so there's the tweet. See if you guys have participated yet. Oh, wait. Can I open that up? Yeah, I can open that up from there. Cool. So you guys can go ahead and supremacist. Yeah, I think supremacist. I think we're gonna go white supremacist. Oh, Seth Andrew, what a piece of crap. All right. Anyway, yeah, let's go with white supremacy, because I think they're not necessarily nationalist per se. They're more about, you know, cultural, political, economic. So yeah, let's have a quick look at their crap group, because they've got some really crappy things going. All right. Hey, everyone. Racists and their racisms. So it's worth pointing out that if groups such like if white supremacists like Brian Edwards and groups in his white supremacist group MythInformed were interested in inequality and justice for all, liberty and justice for all, they would have potential solutions. They would have ways of just saying, look, I don't like CRT. And people are perfectly happy, like, say they want to take a different approach to solving the problems of racism. They could have the position, hey, we don't like CRT, but we think that there are other ways of going about dealing with racism in America, dealing with structural racism, dealing with cultural norms that are very harmful. And also, we're not going to contribute to that by demonizing people of color. But no, they actually do the opposite. Let's look at take a few minutes to look at who they choose to pick on. And we can also look at their YouTube channel. So, because the way that they curate this, it's basically like attacking Black people 101. You look at it. So, yeah, it's kind of difficult to see here, but in this one, this critical race theory workshop, which is actually on anti-bias education, but they call it critical race theory because they lie. They lie because they want to gin up white grievances, and white anxieties, and they want to stoke white racial antagonisms. They are a hate group. So again, we've got a person of a man of color. This one has just got a quick thing. What is this? I think it's maybe some sort of like 5th grader teacher explains how she feels uncomfortable teaching non-white kids and why white educators need to teach race. Yeah. I mean, they act like I should be offended when a white person is honest about the fact they've lived in a white bubble. Now I actually want to come back to this because my first point is MythFormed is a hate group and Brian Edwards is a white supremacist, and their agenda is to dominate the conversation about racism in such a way that no progress can be made. They offer no solution. All they do is tear people down and lie about people and attack Black people in particular. So going back, this again is another Black woman that they're criticizing. Again, these are more clips attacking Black women. This is a whole conference, but ultimately the conference itself, or this is like, yeah, a white person who's introducing it, and this is set up for the Black people. So we got one white person, but if you just go through it, you can see again, especially Black women, they love to attack Black women, Black men, Black women. It's who they want to hold up. And here, who do they hold up? Freaking Cotton. This complete racist, right? Tom Cotton is a massive racist, and this is who they're holding up. So the goal of these kinds of groups is to do the Chris Rufo propaganda thing, right? It's about taking a legal theory that points out white supremacy in institutions and cultures, and Chris Rufo admitted it's going to be, he wants to turn anything that's anti-racism, anything that's pro-justice, anything that's about racial equality, and they want to call it all critical race theory. Now, why would they want to do this? Why would someone want to lump in all anti-racism, anti-bias, critique of white supremacy under one label and discredit all anti-racism work? Because they're racist. And if they had an alternative framework for dealing with these problems, then I wouldn't say that, but they don't. Their solution to racism is to attack the people who are criticizing. And we need to call them a hate group. And we need to call Brian Edwards a freaking white nationalist, supremacist. We decided on supremacist, right? Yeah, he's a white supremacist, and this is a white supremacist channel. And what they want to do here with their crappy little 163 views on stuff is they're trying to do ponage. They're trying to relive the glory days of 2015, where the person to kick and the person to stomp on and the people to humiliate and dehumanize were women, right? And eventually they got tired of kicking women. They got tired of stomping on women. They got tired of, abusing online feminists of all makes and models and stripes, and they had to find a new target because it got boring. So now they decided to go after Black people who are speaking up for liberty and justice. All right, let's unpack their lies in particular. By the way, who else? Jolly. Hey, yeah, Jolly writes, much of white superiority ideas were created by Western empires as a means to justify conquests and occupations of non-white countries. Still, at the time, it was a propaganda tool. Absolutely. And the thing is that propaganda tool is still being taught at taxpayers. Right. Here's a thing I learned this week. I don't know if I mentioned this, maybe it was last week. Finally teaches students. All right. We are in 2021. 2021. Civil War ended, 1865? Right? Students in Texas only started learning that slavery was the primary cause of the Civil War in 2019. Let me just kind of go into this in a bit more detail to blow your mind a little bit more. Because I think in that order, there was one of them that I read, they talked about, let me make sure this has got the right phrase in it. No, block you, Smithsonian, I don't know what you want to give me, but I don't care. in that order. No, it must be another one. Let me go back because there was an article that I saw. Oh, maybe it was the NPR one where it described the ranking of events that led to the Civil War as taught by teachers in taxpayer-funded schools. Yes. In taxpayer-funded public schools since the founding of public education, right? Let me blow this up a little bit more so y'all can see, right? So this article came out in 2018, and it reads, Texas Board of Education voted Friday to change the way its students learned about the Civil War. Beginning in the 2019-2020 school year, students will be taught that slavery played a central role in the war. Texas students of all ethnic backgrounds have been brainwashed into thinking slavery wasn't that big of a deal by public school teachers for a century and a half. Where are Mythcon on this? Mythcon Milwaukee, where are you in the fact that speaking out against Texas's indoctrination of students with white supremacist, pro-Confederacy talking points? Where is that conversation? They want to attack people who are in universities who are giving lectures about how we can understand racism and break it down in American society. But they're not actually dealing with the propaganda, the white supremacist propaganda being taught at taxpayers' expense all over the country. And why is that? Why do they only care about attacking anti-racism work and not attacking white supremacist propaganda? Because they're white supremacists. It's the only answer that makes sense. It's the only answer that makes sense. When you are against anti-racism, and that is your raison d'etre, that is your mode of being, what are you except racists? Right? And had they had any moral credibility, had they been out, had Brian Edwards been out criticizing Texas for its white supremacist indoctrination of students, maybe we could extend them a little bit of courtesy. But here's the thing is when I've brought this up with MythInformed, when I've shown them actually the consequences of racism in Milwaukee, which let's look at that. Right? Oh, okay. We're gonna look at that next because I want to stay focused. Right? But Milwaukee. Yeah. We're gonna look at how Milwaukee schools are the most hyper-segregated in the country. Yes, Brian Edwards lives in a racially segregated school district, and he is out here attacking Black educators, Black experts, and Black activists in America who are doing work to try to unpack this, to undo this. And he is working against it. They are working against it. All right. Back to Texas and their indoctrination into white supremacist talking points. The state's previous social studies standards list 3 causes for the Civil War: sectionalism, states' rights, and slavery, in that order. Black people's human rights was the least most important thing about the Civil War. Ending the evil institution, the morally reprehensible, and now acknowledged as criminal, endeavor of kidnapping, false imprisonment, forced labor, sexual abuse, murder without any kind of recourse to justice. Yeah, we not talked about. That actually had nothing to do with it. It was really all about white people. It was about white people having disagreements over their own rights to exploit other people. They leave that part of it out. What's the use of states' rights? Oh, sorry. So this is Democratic Board member Marissa Perez-Diaz from San Antonio, and she is completely right. Quote, what the use of states' rights is doing is essentially blanketing or skirting the real foundational issue, which is slavery. Right? And of course, white supremacists, white defending, white ego invested at the sake of other people's lives. Board member David Bradley argued you have to keep the other causes. Each state had differences and made individual decisions as to whether or not to join into the conflict, right? I mean, that's the definition of states' rights. Be honest. you had a bunch of poor white people going to war to defend the rights of rich white people to murder, exploit, steal from, and sexually abuse and torture black people. What is there to defend? What is there to defend in this? Except white people's fragile egos over their dead ancestors who, can I just be honest, if David Bradley met his great-great-great-grandpappy or great-great-great-grand-uncle or whoever it was that decided that it was worth dying to make sure white people could own black people, that great-great-great-uncle would hate you, David. Look at the culture. You probably enjoy sports, right? Where black men and black women play and, you know, make a lot of money and or have autonomy. They would hate you for that. You tolerate having an integrated society. They would hate you for this. This is the thing, is these old racists that they are defending would hate them for allowing as much integration and acceptance of people of color today. So who are you fighting for? What are you preserving? Are you preserving the hate of the past, or do you want to work towards freedom and equality of the future? In the end, the Republican-led board landed on a compromise. Because, you always have to negotiate with the oppressors and get their permission to tell the truth about their oppression. Are you kidding me? Like, honestly, what is stopping this other than white people's egos? Over a war that was over a century and a half ago, and that they don't know a single living person from anymore. What is being defended here? Except human exploitation and racism. And why are white people and white culture so precious about defending evil and yet calling themselves good? Can we just be honest with ourselves, white America, white Americans, about our white culture? No. I had an interaction with somebody who was a myth-informed follower, and when I pointed out that they discovered a mass grave near Tulsa, Oklahoma, after the race riot, right, 1920 something, that was 100 years ago. The Holocaust was almost 100 years ago. Nobody thinks that's a legitimate reason to dismiss mass murder. So why is it, because white people did it? Apparently, white people, when we commit a mass murder, when we commit, we do that like, you can only, like, that's only 5 years, and then that just goes away. Because, we're just going to whitewash that. The justifications that people come up with in order to dismiss the crimes against humanity committed by white Americans against other Americans just really doesn't ever fail to astound me. All right, here we go. House Democrat Lawrence Allen Jr., board's only African American member, again, representation matters, helped write the new language. It's a lot harder to white-splain white oppression when there is actually a black person in the room who has the same power as you do, like that. This is why representation matters. And it's not saying that every single person will, based on their identity, perfectly represent every other member of their community. But certainly having someone who has lived as a black person in America on that board will present and just force people to acknowledge the existence of black Americans in that space. That previously a white-only space would only have to deal with members of the audience. And that makes a difference. It really does. He believes, helped write the new language, he believes it draws a straighter line between slavery and the Civil War than the previous standards did, because they were being indoctrinated into white supremacist talking points at taxpayer expense. And will Myth-informed, will Brian Edwards talk about that? No. I don't think we really have that as a consensus in our state, he said, and so if we can't drive it to a consensus in our state, we need to let our students look at it from all viewpoints. Like, honestly, they're negotiating with people who are defending genocide and torture and slavery. The board also decided to keep Hillary Clinton and Helen Keller in the curriculum, reversing a decision that made headlines in September. Women, Helen Clinton and Keller, were initially removed, along with other historical figures, in an effort to streamline the state's social studies standards. Yeah, we're just going to cover up slavery and we're going to remove women as extra. Women are, like, even not even white women deserve our time and effort in studying the history of the most free country in the world. The approved curriculum still lists only one cause for the Israel-Palestine conflict, the rejection of the existence of the State of Israel by the Arab League and the majority of Arab nations. So there you go. You get pro-nationalist, pro-Israeli nationalist talking points too, because that's not true. Yeah, so this only went into effect in 2019-2020. Learning that slavery played a central, it was the reason for the Civil War. And they're still being indoctrinated into white supremacist talking points in Texas at taxpayer expense. Because white people who run stuff don't want to deal with the crap that white people did in the past. They're fine to, demonize, Arab people for what they do, but they won't turn that self-critical, self-reflective lens upon themselves. All right, so getting back to, this white supremacist group, right? Milwaukee's schools are the most hyper-segregated in the nation, and I grew up in Wisconsin naively thinking that, slavery, racism was really a problem in the South. And probably it's because it was how that was presented to me. Racism had to be segregation, or, objecting to people being in physical spaces, or not letting them be, not interviewing them for jobs, not considering them as candidates, right? But there is a more, I don't want to say it's more pernicious. Racism that is under the surface and covered up with politeness and colorblindness is more difficult to deal with because it doesn't look as aggressive and threatening. And so when it comes to this problem of Black students being segregated in Milwaukee schools, right here, I'll just read this. New research on Black-white disparities in Metro Milwaukee draws a sobering conclusion about education. Black students here attend the most racially segregated schools in the nation. Not only that, but schools have resegregated over the years. Black children are as racially isolated in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2020 as they were in 1965. And if you're going to talk about racism in America and you're talking about critical race theory, then you need to deal with the crap in your own backyard, Myth-Informed and Brian Edwards. And attacking Black people is not going to, attacking Black people who criticize racism and criticize these kinds of policies that result in racial segregation isn't going to solve the problem. University of Wisconsin Milwaukee professor emeritus Mark Levine is the author of the report, The State of Black Milwaukee. It outlines devastating between Black and white people in metropolitan Milwaukee, which includes 4 counties: Milwaukee, Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington. Quote, "The bottom line is racial inequality in Milwaukee is as bad as it's ever been," Levine said. "Levels of racial isolation and economic isolation in schools is as great as it's ever been." He found that Milwaukee ranks the worst for hyper-segregation out of the nation's largest 15 metro areas. New York is next with 66%, and it's 72% in metro. Black students in Milwaukee attend a hyper-segregated school, where students of color make up 90% or more of the enrollment. I think there's a number of reasons for school segregation. I think there's a number of reasons school segregation is quite important, Levine said. We've long recognized since Brown versus the Board of Education decision in 1954 how central school segregation is to overall segregation and overall levels of racial inequality. In 1976, a federal judge ordered Milwaukee public schools to desegregate. MPS created magnet schools to draw diverse students together who participated in cross-district voluntary integration programs, which bused Black students to predominantly white suburban schools and vice versa. The solutions were far from perfect. There's been a lot of criticisms, but when I look at the data, I was astounded to see Milwaukee had gone from a place in the late 1960s of having the most segregated school systems in the country, with 72% of African American students attending hyper-segregated schools, having gone by the 1987 to only 21% of African American students attending hyper-segregated. But then it didn't last. From the 1990s to today, a combination of factors drove the segregation back up to 1960 era levels. The factors included white flight, the end of Chapter 220 busing, and the rise of education options that did not have integration goals, including open enrollment and private school vouchers. Let all the white kids get out and get to the best schools. So, yeah, right in their own backyard. And what are Mythcon tweeting about? Well, let's take a look. I see Jolly in the chat's got a lot going on. So, slavery was not the reason for the Civil War at all. It was a war of who controls the U.S. No. Lincoln wanted all slaves to be sent back to Africa, would have sent all of them back, but after slavery, the North Stuffication, he couldn't. I think there were some discussions of that, but it was simply not physically possible. And so I would disagree that slavery was not the reason for the Central. It was. It absolutely was. It absolutely was the reason for the Civil War. I mean, they said it. Like, the southern states declared it was the reason. So it was. Liberian society is still distorted by the colonists' actions of sending freed American slaves back there. Yep. Yeah, let's talk about slavery was the cause of the Civil War. All right, causes of the Civil War. Common explanation of the Civil War was fought over moral issue of slavery. In fact, it was the economics of slavery and political control of the system was central to the conflict. Still about slavery. I actually don't think it was really so much about the morality. It's true, like, white people didn't care that much about black people. A key issue was states' rights, but the southern states wanted to assert their authority over the federal government, blah, 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 blah. The South wished to take slavery into the Western territories, while the North was committed to keeping them open to white labor only. So yeah, let's be a little bit honest here. I mean, let's look at Utah. Oregon. Oregon was a state that was a white-only state. It was against the law to, like, be black in Oregon when they first formed. So maintaining, like, white economic control and arguing over money, yeah, I think that that's actually a better way of framing it, because I think when you talk about, slavery being being the central cause, because we morally find slavery reprehensible in the 21st century, it's easy to jump to that conclusion. But if you think about it more of white people arguing over money and who gets to work where, because we know, like, the white states, they might be, there might be individuals who are abolitionists and whatsoever, but yes, and there were some moral arguments, but economic, absolutely. Slavery is a cause of the Civil War. The role of slavery in bringing on the Civil War has been hotly debated. One important aspect of approaching the issue is to look at contemporary observers had to say. In 1861, Alexander Stephens, Vice President of the Confederate States of America, gave this view, quote, "The new Confederate Constitution has put at rest forever all agitating questions relating to our particular institution, African slavery, as it exists among us. The proper status of the Negro in our form of civilization. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. The prevailing ideas entertained by most of the leading statesmen at the time of the formation of the old Constitution was that the enslavement of the African was a violation of the laws of nature, and it was wrong in principle, social, morally acceptable. Politically, these ideas, however, were fundamentally wrong. They rested upon the assumption of the equality of the races. This was an error. Our new government is founded on exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery's subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition." Alexander Stephens, March 21, 1861, reported in the Savannah Republican, emphasis in the original. Yep. So it's, you can quibble about the morality thing. I think, it's about power, it's about racism, and it's about money. And white men and white women who allied with them didn't want to give up any control. They wanted to control women's bodies. They wanted to control black people's bodies. They wanted to control where natives people could live. They wanted to control, they wanted to let white Europeans flood in while strongly controlling any other place of national origin. It's evil. It's freaking evil. So, yes, slavery was absolutely the cause of the war, and if you want to make the argument that it was economic and not moral, I think that there are excellent grounds for that. And also, it's just that, let's face it, even with the North's interest economically, they were just vile racists. Like this guy right here, disgusting, vile racist. And that hatred, that racial animus that was indoctrinated and reinforced and inculcated and normalized by laws and legitimized by court decisions, just bred a disgusting, vile sickness that we, like white culture in America, what I grew up in, it's still there. It's absolutely still there. Brian Edwards is an example of it. MythInformed is an example. Prison labor is basically the same thing. Yeah. I mean, they just like moved, the exploitation of labor from one system built by white racism, structured by white racism and its norms established with white cultures and racist assumptions, and moved it over to another institution. So let's look at how this racism, this white supremacy, shows itself in the norms of Mythcon. All right, and Brian Edwards, because he's also. Oh, by the way, did everyone have a chance to vote? I wanna give y'all a chance to vote in that poll, so I'll put it up again. Ace, yeah. All right. Copy link to tweet. For people who are new, didn't see this before, I'm trying to decide best way to call a term for, okay, put that back up. Brian Edwards and MythInformed, are they, oh, by the way, Brian Edwards blocked me a long time ago. But that's all right, I'll keep criticizing racists in my home state, because no one else, it's not to say no one else seems to be, but I can call out that crap because I think they give my home state a bad name, or maybe they just reveal what my home state is really like in some quarters that I realize. I knew nice people. Anyway, I want to racists like them. Okay, so let's listen to what this woman has to say, and then we'll check the reality of what her words are to the white supremacist framing that Brian Edwards and his group Mythcon put on it. So this lighting isn't not ideal, but oh well, we're gonna have to just cope. Desktop audio on. Let's have a listen, y'all.
Black woman.
Whoop. Gotta turn that up.
I also think, as a Black woman living in America, one cannot minimize the intense frustration watching people that look like you being terrorized. It seemed almost daily, really culminating in the assassination of George Floyd. And one of my mentors, Dr. Ogabegde, talked about George Floyd as a saint, Saint George Floyd. And I really appreciate that framing, because really thinking about how his death will not be in vain. And as a result of the public display of his murder, there has been a reckoning across this country, internationally, but even in our community at Yale, in terms of how do we commit to anti-racist practices, for sure. But
okay, so you heard that, right? Did that seem did that seem in any way outrageous to you? In any way, inaccurate? In any way hysterical? And yet here, Yale Psychiatry Department professor, the assassination of George Floyd represented the culmination of Black people being terrorized on a daily basis. She thinks it's proper to refer to him as Saint George Floyd. Critical race theory, a new fundamentalist religion. Fucking lies. Like, okay, so what sort of racial animus drives this hate group to lie so blatantly about what she said in this clip? I'll put in the past. I mean, honestly, she didn't say anything ridiculous. If anything, if you listened with just like the smallest amount of empathy to what Black Americans are saying about how they feel when they see people who look like them being murdered on the streets, caught on camera, no doubt who did it, no doubt how long it took, nothing like that, and yet we still have to wonder if their family is going to get justice. And they want to attack her as the person who is out of touch. And they're gaslighting her. Like, is it because she's an academic? Can't spell today. An academic. How should I put like an accomplished Alright, I gotta figure out, okay. So anyway, I want to tweet on live on there. I think I can shorten that down. Sorry, you guys, this has got to be boring. So I will end this quickly. Alright. Because she's Black, a woman, or an academic, or because she's the thing they fear the most, an accomplished, respected Black woman who is telling the truth about racism. Yeah, alright, so that's enough of me trolling. I find it really super frustrating. So let's talk about another way that they lie about Black people, and especially Black academics, Black experts. Brian Edwards and MythInformed have a real agenda to try to discredit Black experts, Black academics who say very sensible things, and make them sound, they're trying to do the same gaslighting that they did to feminists. So we're gonna talk about the difference between the idea that white people are inherently racist versus white Americans, should we say, white Americans grow up in a culture that is steeped in white supremacy and white nationalism and all of that racism. And that lies within our unconscious, like that is the culture on which we draw. I mean, think about just what we looked at in Texas, right? Every single student, Black or white, or any other background, right, who has been exposed to this, they have been indoctrinated. They have been tested on their ability to regurgitate white supremacist pro-Confederacy talking points as historical fact. Slavery, not that much of a big deal. Really, it's just about white people arguing. And when they talk about states' rights, again, this is a way to remove the horrors of slavery and the horrors of the racial underpinnings of that slavery from the conversation. Oh no, it's just a bunch of white men who didn't get along, and not including that part of it. So when you are indoctrinated into that worldview, you don't have the facts. That frames all your other understandings, because when someone comes at you with the truth, like with that quote we just saw you are now getting information that's counter to your programming. And so you're going to question not your own education, but the facts. So you're drawing on a racist narrative to defend white atrocities. And whether or not you are think you're a racist or you are a racist, if you're not aware of the fact that you are drawing on white supremacist talking points because they've been presented to you as historical fact, you are unconsciously connected to that racist agenda, right? So let's listen to what Mark Lamont Hill says.
To do this?
Oh, is that also really soft? Okay, that is also really soft, so let's bring that up.
To do this, you have to use this racialism, use this racial divide as a tool to paint all white people as inherently racist.
Can we just say, nobody complains that white people for centuries painted black people as animals and inferior. Like, we don't, that doesn't come up. That cultural programming and that base that was built into what the media presentations, to cultural norms, to newspapers presentations, all of that. We never talk about how white people demonize black people forever since they got to this country. But when you point out white people did that, when you point out white culture is responsible for that, suddenly you hate all white people? Nah.
Do you believe that? Do you believe all white people are inherently racist?
So I don't know if you're backing me into a corner with that question, but yes, I do. I do believe that all white people are at some level, at the unconscious level, connected to racism. It's unavoidable. I think all men are sexist at some level. I think that is absolutely the case.
So what they're saying is all white people are inherently racist, and no. He's talking about how the culture, when you are steeped in white supremacy, that you develop assumptions that you don't even realize are lies and are racism. And, I am having to constantly work to deprogram myself and see how white supremacy influenced music theory to make a preference toward European music, how federal highway policy was influenced by racism, why everything, there's so many things that you dig down into in American history, and you find out that at some point, racism influenced the outcome. We need to be honest about this. And instead of being honest, they just lie. They just lie. I think we've agreed. We have the poll. Look at refresh. Yeah, white supremacists. Definitely going to go with white supremacists. They don't really seem to be about nationalism. So yeah, we're going to go white supremacy. All right. Thanks a lot for that. What else? Oh, we got 10 minutes left. And so what I can do, y'all, is for the last 10 minutes, we can have a little conversation if you guys want to throw some things in the chat. Otherwise, I had a question for y'all. Maybe I'll make a poll. I can make a poll. Would you like the intro music change? Now I'm thinking about doing a little housekeeping. So the rest of this, now we're done. Go give feedback to Mythcon Milwaukee. Go tag Brian Edwards and ask him why he doesn't care about segregation in Milwaukee. Because I think that we deserve some answers. They're plenty fine demonizing black experts, black academics, black people who speak about their issues, but they run away from real world problems. So yeah, it's been a while. Like my intro's a bit dusty. It's pre-COVID, and I'm thinking about doing a bit of a change. Now, the thing about changing is people kind of get used to, you might get used to hearing my intro music. Like, that might be something you associate with the show. And so the idea of changing the music might feel like, no, I'm used to this now. I'm used to the jazz. I come here, I hear the jazz, and I'm getting ready for your show, Kristi. But it's also, like I said, it's been a minute. See, already someone's like, no, keep the music. Even if I don't keep the music, I might change the intro because, like I said, I need some fresh stuff in there. But yeah, go ahead and tell me if you want to hear some different music at the beginning. And if so, if that seems popular, I'll do that. Otherwise, I won't. So let's see. Jolly, Kristi, slavery isn't a white issue, it's a human issue. Yeah, we're talking about the history of slavery, Jolly. Like, when you talk about the historical grounds, then you need to talk about the fact that it is a white issue. It is absolutely. If you look at who has the power, and you're saying, like, right now it has its slave camps, who's in charge of it in the states, right? Who's in the legislatures? Who's filling up, who's the judges? Who are running the private prisons? It's not people of color, so I don't really know what your point is. I know it just seems like you're trying to whitewash things for white people. I don't know if that's what you're aiming for, but that's definitely how it's kind of coming across. And my name doesn't start with a CH, so it's literally in the channel. Like, it's literally on screen. So, different sides in a war can have different reasons for fighting. You can argue that for the Union slavery and particular slaves were largely irrelevant, but it was the South expressed reason. Yeah, well, I think, as that one article was pointing out, that white people had economic interest in preventing Black laborers from working where they wanted to have white people exclusively. So I think that it is difficult to get away from white culture's racism whenever you talk about slavery in America. All right, Lucky Wanderer, I actually think they are white nationalists, because if they were white supremacists, I don't think they would think their fellow whites would be so stupid as to believe them. All right. The visuals are what, yeah, I agree. That's what I said. The visuals are going to be, oh God, we're not going to go back. Jolly, I know you want to distract from white people, but talking about Muslims isn't going to solve the problem of racism in America, and that's what I care about. What I care about is Americans, especially white culture that indoctrinates all American kids into these white supremacist lies to own their crap. I'm not interested in, like, putting blame on Muslims when there is plenty of blame that white people haven't acknowledged yet. Oh, God. Coach Red Pill comes in with no arguments. I mean, if you have to come in with your misogyny to start, then there's nothing in your brain. This is one thing I will say about people who are anti-critical race theory. They have no ability to actually formulate arguments. I don't know, you go and respond to them, like Coach comes in and he immediately has to go to an ad hom. He has to go to a logical fallacy because he's not smart enough to formulate a good criticism of critical theory that addresses the problem of solving racism. So, all right. So, it's a very aggressive poll. It's like we wanted to change, but I'm pretty indifferent. Yeah, fair enough. The updates, they will get updated. Hey, Kevin! Kevin sensed Coach. But honestly, how pathetic do you have to be to jump into somebody else's comments and when you want to, like, take them on for their arguments, and instead you are reduced? It's just such small D energy, really. So, well, Kevin stopped by just before the end of the show, so thanks for that. Yeah, I'm wrapping up. So next time, I don't know what we're going to talk about in the show, but we will discuss Kuhn, and we will discuss the paradigm shifts and revolutions in science, from revolutions and relativism from Kuhn to the Strong Program, and hopefully we're going to dip into gender and science, the feminist view. So let me just give you a quick little read, because I'm interested in that section, so let's see how it's going to start out. All right, let's do the first two paragraphs, just as a little preview, because I've got a little time, so this will whet your appetite for the next episode. Once science had been shown by the radical science movement and by sociologists of science to be a thoroughly social process, the way was opened up to an exploration of a variety of different aspects of this sociality. Science could be seen as following the dictates of an instrumental reason, as in its modernist mission to subdue nature, as expressing the worldview of a dominant class or culture, or, more narrowly, as the arena for the power play of scientists themselves. The emergence of renewed and energetic feminist movement at the end of the 1960s ensured that yet another dimension of science's social character would be exposed, its relations to gender. At first, feminist scholars emphasized the exclusion of women from science, analyzing the mechanisms by which this exclusion took place. They held not that women were absent from science, but that their presence was predominantly confined to ancillary and supporting roles, providing the practical support for research almost always defined by men. The aim of this liberal feminist research was to bring the obstacles to female participation and advancement in science to public attention, that science itself would benefit from greater female participation followed, from the obvious fact that a huge reservoir of talent was simply not being tapped. I'm going to go on because this is important. But this assumed that women had the inherent capacity for science and at the same time did not pose the possibility that women in science might make a qualitative difference to the way science was done. Studies of the work of that small minority of women who have been allowed to make their mark as scientific innovators revealed interesting answers to both questions. Despite immensely greater obstacles, some women clearly had made important contributions to science. This dispensed with the prejudice that women were somehow constitutionally incapable of major scientific achievements. But at least some of these women scientists, who did not necessarily identify themselves as feminists or even attach significance to their gender in relations to their work as scientists, could be shown to challenge the ruling self-image of science by their distinctive visions and ways of working. All right, so we're going to look at that a little bit more. Sorry. We're going to look a little bit more into that, but after we get through Kuhn and revolutions and paradigm shifts and whatnot. So anyone else have any more for any more? I'm going to have a look in the chat. What have you guys had to say? Band coach Red Pill thought he was discussing. Oh, he is discussing. Weird insult from CRP. Like, so what? Oh, yeah. He's definitely, he's very drama needy. Like, CRP doesn't, he thinks that insults are somehow intellectually valid. And so rather than working on his knowledge and his understanding of a topic, he will just insult people. And he thinks that he gets the best insult on you if he attacks you the most, and he can hurt your fifis, that somehow that makes him right, when all it does is show that he's a... So, yeah, he's been pretty thirsty for... You always miss the music at the beginning? All right, so what do people say about the music? Oh, it's 50-50. Oh, you guys are... All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the graphics. I'm going to work on that. What I might do is bring in some new, like maybe one new song. So maybe one old song, one new song. So it's a little bit... 17 votes now. Change the music. All right. That is it for me, people. Thank you for your time. Thanks for stopping by on a Sunday. If you can't get enough of the sound of my dulcet tones, you can always check out my D&D channel. Actually, I have another video for that I have to upload today because we were having some technical problems last night. And so I've got to clean that video up and repost it. But yes, I think then the next time you can see me, if you want to head over to Kevin Logan's Twitch channel, I appear pretty much every single Friday as Happy Hour. And then the last episode we talked to Ina. Previously, we talked to Thomas. So if you were following all that, you can have a listen to that conversation as well. So then I guess all that's left to be said is, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon, wherever it is, whenever it is you are. Stay well, stay healthy, and be happy, and all of my best until the next time we see each other. All right. Bye-bye.